Hello and welcome to From Digital to D&D. In this series, some random guy on the internet tries to take a character from fiction and attempts to turn them into a usable stat block for you to use in your games of Dungeons & Dragons. For those of you unaware, each episode of this series will be broken down into the following sections. The character introduction, where I attempt to explain the background of the character. The feature breakdown, where I point out what aspect of the character I'll be attempting to convert. The stat block, where I show off the monster sheet and explain how it worked and how to use it. And finally the plot hooks, where I explain possible uses for the character in your games of D&D. Naturally, any character that features in this series belongs to their respective owners. For this episode, we're going to look at a creature from a franchise that has crossed over with D&D before. We're delving into the blocky world of Minecraft, owned by Mojang, to look at one of its most dangerous mobs. That which lurks in the cities long buried, rising only to destroy any who disturb it. The Warden. The Warden is one of the most powerful mobs in all of Minecraft, boasting the strongest melee attack in the game at the time of recording. The Warden is a hostile mob found in the deep underground in the overworld, specifically in the deep dark biome where patches of Sculk have grown. The Sculk and the Wardens are a package deal, as a Warden only spawns when a Sculk Shrieker calls for it. When active, a Warden stumbles around to locate the source of the disturbance. If it finds the source to be a player or a mob, the Warden gives chase. A Warden only stops its hunt once it kills the creature or the creature manages to flee far away. You heard me right, by the way. A Warden is not a singular entity like the Ender Dragon or Wither. If you're not careful, you can have multiple Wardens spawn, turning the situation from dangerous to deadly. As a Minecraft mob, there's not much to say about the Warden in terms of character, other than the mystery of the skull. Starting off with the most unique feature of a Warden, its sight, or lack thereof. Wardens are completely blind. They rely on sound, touch, and smell to see. Both the Wardens and Sculk are hypersensitive to sound, able to detect anything louder than a whisper. Due to the symbiotic nature of the two entities, I'll break both of them down, starting with the Sculk. The Sculk is an alien-like entity that appears almost plant-like in nature and could almost be described as a fungus. Sculk grows out of a special block known as a Sculk catalyst that serves as the heart for the growth. If the catalyst is destroyed, the Sculk tendrils that grew from it still remain but can no longer grow unless another catalyst is placed within the area. When nothing is around, the Sculk remains inactive, but once it senses something with its sound-sensitive sensors, it reacts. The Sculk sensors pick up the detected sound and carry it to other sensors. If a sensor is in range of a Sculk Shrieker, it sets the Shrieker off. As you might guess, the Shrieker emits a loud shrieking sound which can summon a Warden. The Shrieker also shares the ability to inflict the darkness status effect on a player who stands on it. I'll explain the darkness effect in the Warden section. But the most curious part of the Sculk is how it grows. Unlike a normal plant or fungus, it only grows when a player or mob dies within close proximity. If something dies near the Sculk, it rapidly grows in a big burst as it feeds on the experience points of the creature. The more experience the creature has, the larger the subsequent growth is. With the exception of the vines, destroying any part of the Sculk drops some of the XP it ate. Now, to move on to the Warden. As I mentioned, a Warden only appears when a Sculk Shrieker goes off, though it doesn't always manifest. Once summoned, a Warden digs itself out of the ground and begins the hunt. The Warden has Sculk sensors on its head which allow it to detect any loud sounds made. The moment the Warden hears a sound, it wanders over to the source to investigate. If it can't hear anything, the Warden starts to sniff around. The Warden can pick up scents and sounds from up to 160 feet away, drawing closer if it smells something. If the Warden realizes a creature is close by, it enters an enraged state and begins the chase, now able to sense the creature constantly. The Warden charges with great speed towards the player and will only stop once the creature is dead or the creature manages to escape the area. Escape is difficult, however, as hiding no longer works. Distance only helps a little as the Warden can still attack those who try to climb away from it. With a charge up, it emits a sonic boom from its chest at the target. The scary thing is that this attack always hits and cannot be stopped by anything, passing through walls and shields. Taking the Warden on in a fight is a terrible idea, as it can kill a player in full enchanted netherite gear in about 2 hits. The sheer might of the Warden is unrivaled, which can also be said for its endurance. At the time of recording, the Warden has the most amount of health of any mob in Minecraft. But the Warden isn't done yet. It has one more notable trait, and that is its ability to inflict the Darkness status effect. The Warden inflicts this condition on anything within 20 blocks of it every 6 seconds. The Darkness status effect reduces the player's vision to just a short distance in front of them, anything beyond being shrouded in shadows. This can let the Warden surprise a player as it charges from the darkness, which is really scary if you ask me. The Warden is not meant to be fought, it's meant to be avoided altogether. Woe be the fool who tries to slay a Warden. I had quite a lot of fun with this one, as the Warden is such a special mob. It's not a boss mob as said by Mojang themselves, which meant I had to avoid certain elements like legendary actions. And this is what I ended up with. The sheet might seem short from a glance, but I can assure you this is one strong monster. Feel free to check it out at your own pace, but I'll run through each part of it and explain how it works. Starting off, the Warden is a large construct. This was easily the hardest part for me to decide, as you can argue the Warden is an undead, a monstrosity, or even an aberration. I avoided undead because when the Warden first came out it was classed as an undead mob, only to be changed later on. The reason I settled on construct is because some theories suggest the Warden was a golem, made by whoever lived in the ancient cities before the Sculk came. Despite being hyper-aggressive, the Warden is unaligned. The Wardens don't drag things out, torture, forgive, or do anything that shows morality. They simply kill intruders like a white blood cell kills invaders. The Warden has an armor class of 16 and an average of 220 hit points. With 20 d10 hit dice and a constitution bonus of 110, a Warden can have up to 310 hit points. The Warden only has a walking speed of 30 feet, slow, but stick with me. Moving on to stats, the Warden has the following: 26 strength, 10 dexterity, 20 constitution, 6 intelligence, 60 wisdom, and 13 charisma. The Warden is proficient in 2 saving throws, having plus 12 to strength saving throws and plus 9 to constitution saving throws. They also have a plus 12 to athletics checks and a plus 7 to perception checks. Moving on to damage resistances, the Warden has resistance to necrotic damage, as well as any bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing damage from non-magical attacks that aren't adamantine. As I found out the hard way, Wardens are immune to fire damage. Since it lacks any eyes, the Warden is immune to the blinding condition. As for senses, the Warden has blind sight up to 160 feet, but it can't see any further than that. 160 feet might seem odd, but when I converted the actual Warden's detection radius, that was the number I ended up with. You can reduce it to a traditional 120 feet if it bothers you. Due to the bonus to its perception, the Warden has a passive perception of 17. The Warden has shown no signs of speech, only letting out groans and roars, which is why it has no languages. To reflect the danger the Warden is meant to represent, I made it a CR12 monster. In low-level games, it should be just as deadly as it is in Minecraft, and in high-level games, you can have multiple Wardens active to keep the difficulty up. Moving on to traits, the first trait is echolocation. If the Warden is deafened, its blind sight is reduced to 10 feet. This gives the players the choice to deafen the Warden to try and escape it, as it will have no idea where anyone is if they're more than 10 feet away. The next trait is keen hearing and smell, which gives the Warden advantage on perception checks that rely on hearing and smell. Magic resistance gives the Warden advantage on saving throws against spells and magical effects. The Warden's next trait is overwhelming might. This counts the Warden's attacks as magical to bypass resistances and immunities. The next trait is Sculk Glide, which lets the Warden burrow through Sculk and anything the Sculk has infested. It can burrow at the same speed as its walking speed, so 30 feet. The Warden doesn't disturb the materials it moves through whilst burrowing this way. The Warden has one more trait, and it's arguably its most important, the Shroud of Darkness. This trait forces each creature that either starts its turn or during its turn enters within 65 feet of the Warden to make a DC 17 Wisdom saving throw. The 65 feet also comes from the conversion of Minecraft distance to feet. If the Warden is incapacitated, this trait isn't active, and creatures immune to being blinded are immune to this effect. If the creature fails the saving throw, it is blinded until the start of its next turn. As a reminder, a blinded creature fails any check that relies on sight, attack rolls against it have advantage, and its attack rolls have disadvantage. If the creature succeeds, its vision is reduced to 20 feet, and the area beyond that becomes heavily obscured for the creature until the start of its next turn. This is the most dangerous part of the Warden with this sheet, as having visibility reduced or outright removed is a major pain. But now we can move on to actions, and the Warden has the multi-attack action. This action lets the Warden make 2 slam attacks. Slam is the Warden's primary attack, being a melee weapon attack with a plus 12 to hit against one target within 5 feet. On a hit, the target takes 4d12 plus 8 bludgeoning damage. That's a minimum of 12, an average of 34, and a maximum of 56 damage from just one attack. Pair this with the potential advantage of a creature being blinded, this is going to hurt. If the Warden scores a critical hit with a slam attack, the target is also not prone. The final action available is Sonic Boom, which has a recharge roll of 4 to 6. The Warden targets one creature it can sense within 120 feet, even one behind total cover. The creature has to make a DC 17 Constitution saving throw, taking 12d6 thunder damage on a failure or half as much damage on a success. If a creature fails the saving throw by 5 or more, meaning if they roll a 12 or lower, they are also pushed 10 feet away from the Warden and knocked prone. This action is quite dangerous as it always strikes the target, and only being more than 120 feet away can prevent you from being hit by it. But we can now move on to the final section of the sheet. Bonus actions. The Warden has a bonus action called Aggressive Charge, which lets it move up to its full movement speed towards a creature it can sense. That concludes the Warden, but there's still the other side of the coin, the Sculk. Without the Sculk, the Warden loses what makes it most dangerous, and that is that it's not alone. Even if you avoid the Warden, you still need to avoid setting off the Sculk. So I grabbed the primary parts of the Sculk and made them stat sheets too. Starting off with the Sculk Catalyst. Without this entity, the Sculk cannot grow. The Catalyst is a medium plant that is unaligned. Given it serves as the heart of the Sculk, I thought it better to make it slightly larger than the other Sculk growths. The Sculk growths have the same issue as the Warden, as they could be classed as things other than plants. Aberration would fit really well, but I chose plant for simplicity. The Catalyst has an AC of 5 and an average of 13 hit points. With 3d8 hit dice, it's not hard to destroy a Catalyst, but good luck doing so without alerting a Warden. With a speed of 0, because of plant, the Warden has the following stats: 1 strength, 1 dexterity, 10 constitution, 1 intelligence, 3 wisdom, and 1 charisma. It has resistance to necrotic damage, which I gave it as it feeds on the essence of other beings. It is immune to being charmed or frightened and has a passive perception of 6. It has no languages and a CR of 0. The Catalyst's first trait is blind and deaf, which states the Catalyst is always blinded and always deafened. The only thing it can sense is when something dies near it. The second trait is pre-grown. When found in the wild, the Catalyst is already grown. It has managed to spread Sculk in a 30-foot sphere radius which spreads along any surface it can reach. Within this area are 1d4 Sculk Shriekers and 2d4 Sculk Sensors in random positions. The Catalyst has no actions or bonus actions, only having one reaction called Harvest Soul. When a creature dies within the area of the Sculk, it can start to consume the body and soul. At the end of the Catalyst's next turn, the body and soul are devoured. A creature whose soul has been eaten this way can only be resurrected if the Catalyst holding it is destroyed. Once the Catalyst has eaten the body and soul, it begins to rapidly grow at a level dependent on the XP value of the creature. Creatures with a high XP value cause the scroll to grow further. You might ask what the correspondence is between XP and growth, but I saw no way to include that in the reaction itself without things getting overcomplicated. The last section of the reaction states that as this growth occurs, there's a chance Sculk Sensors and Sculk Shriekers appear. Speaking of the sensor, let's move on to that. The Sculk Sensor is a small plant that is unaligned with an AC of 5 and an average of 7 hit points. With 2d6 hit dice, the sensor has a speed of 0 and the following stats: 1 strength, 1 dexterity, 10 constitution, 1 intelligence, 3 wisdom and 1 charisma. It has plus 0 to its perception checks, which might seem odd, but without its expertise in this, it would have a minus 4 to the roll. It is resistant to necrotic damage and immune to being charmed, deafened and frightened. The sensor has blind sight out to 30 feet, but cannot hear anything beyond it. Thanks to its expertise in perception, the sensor has a passive perception of 10. Still no languages, and the sensor is also CR 0. The first trait is blind, which states the sensor is always blinded and can only hear and feel. The next trait is keen hearing, which gives the sensor advantage on perception checks that rely on hearing. The sensor has one reaction, sound signal, which triggers in one of 3 ways. If it hears a sound other than a Sculk Shrieker, it receives an audio signal from another sensor, or a creature touches the sensor. If triggered, the sensor emits an audio pulse out to each sensor, Shrieker and Warden within 30 feet of it. Finally, we come to the Sculk Shrieker. It is a small unaligned plant with an AC of 5 and an average of 10 hit points. It has 3d6 hit dice, a movement speed of 0 and the following stats: 1 strength, 1 dexterity, 10 constitution, 1 intelligence, 3 wisdom and 1 charisma. It is resistant to necrotic damage and immune to being charmed, deafened and frightened. It has a passive perception of 6, no languages, and a CR of 0. The Shrieker has the blind trait, which functions the same way as the sensor. The second trait is Shroud of Darkness. It functions similarly to the Warden's version, but has a trigger radius of 5 feet and a DC of 10. Otherwise, it works the same way. The Shrieker has one reaction, Shriek, which is set off in one of 2 ways: if a Sculk sensor sends an audio signal, or if a creature touches the Shrieker. When triggered, the Shrieker emits a shriek audible to 300 feet away and has a 50% chance of summoning a Warden. It cannot summon a Warden, however, if there is already a Warden within 90 feet of it. And with that, we reach the end of the stat sheets. I feel that for the Warden to work best, you should include the Sculk. But how do we use them narratively? The Warden and Sculk are ripe with narrative potential for one reason. Nobody knows what they actually are or where they came from. The only thing going against them is that they kind of need to be deep within the Underdark. The fact they're always found in ancient underground cities is something you can use to great effect. You could center an entire campaign on discovering what happened to the cities and where the Sculk came from. Given the Sculk can be found outside the cities, it gives off strong Parasite vibes. Imagine the party stumbling across or being sent to a long-lost drow city only to find it in total ruin and total silence. The only thing in the city is a strange black fungus that reacts to their sound. If they aren't careful, they could set off a Shrieker and find out why the area is forever silent. Maybe you could give them a warning to keep sound to a minimum, but then have the party see a different creature flee in terror only to be smashed to bits by something lurking in the dark. The Warden is a wonderful horror monster for a low-level game as it changes the dynamic. The party have to avoid it at all costs. The best hope is to never summon it in the first place. And it can be a great lesson to murder-happy parties when they get TPK'd. This threat can still carry through to high-level play. Maybe a villain has hidden themselves away in an area surrounded by Sculk as a defense. The Sculk can serve as a warning system, and the Warden serve as a defense option. You could even have the main point be to expose the villain's lair to the Sculk and have them destroyed by the very thing they hid behind. Really amp up the creepiness of the Sculk-infested areas as they are devoid of life and sound. The Warden has a special item drop in Minecraft as it drops a Sculk catalyst. Maybe the party have been sent to acquire one for a wizard who wishes to study it. Now they need to figure out how to kill a Warden without dying themselves. Tension is the key tool of the Sculk and Wardens. But with that, we've reached the end of today's video. Before you head off, I'd like to thank you for watching, and I hope you managed to get something out of this. The stat block for the Warden, Sculk Catalyst, Sculk Sensor, and Sculk Shrieker are available on D&D Beyond for free, and the link to them is in the description. I hope you all have a great day, and may your dice roll favourably. Goodbye for now.